For this video here, I'm going to talk about and review 3 movies. Triple review, if you want to call it. Something I've never done before. Now, recently I did talk about a couple of Dario Argento movies, 2 movies, and I gave you my first impressions, but never have done 3 movies in one video. So, yeah, today, the 3 films I'm going to talk about: Driven to Kill, and this is for Flash Flex. And Stranger Boy, he wanted me to review Willy's Wonderland and Final Destination. So I'm going to do my best here. And again, this is something different, never done before, but I'm going to go for it. So, Driven to Kill, 2009 Steven Seagal direct-to-video film. Now, the plot here real quick. So, Seagal, he used to be a former Russian mobster. Used to be an enforcer for the Russian mob, but now he's a crime novelist, and he's abandoned the lifestyle. But his world is turned upside down when he learns that his daughter is marrying a Russian gangster. And, one day, his daughter is brutalized and left in critical condition, and Seagal knows that the Russian mob is responsible, so he goes out for revenge. He's out for revenge and goes after the Russian mob, and that's kind of the plot here. And overall, I would say this was actually an okay movie. Steven Seagal, not too long ago, I just ranted on Attack Force, which is one of his worst movies. And this film here, it's definitely not on par with his early work, whether that be, Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, Under Siege. Even On Deadly Ground, I would put above this movie, easily. But this film here, it's not as, convoluted as most Seagal movies have been. It's a straightforward plot. I mean, I do have issues with the film, but one thing that jumped at me, watching it, Seagal is in decent shape here. It looks like to me he shedded about 25 pounds. And I'm like, why didn't Seagal, do this? Because this film came out in 2009, which is not that long ago when you think about it. And I'm like, why just for this film? Why didn't he, do it after? And around this time, 2007, 08, 09, it seemed like Seagal cared for a little bit, but, it would not last. Because Urban Justice, that came out in, 2007, and that was a decent movie. I've heard good things about Pistol Whipped. And he did this movie, and then not too long after he did Machete. He was the villain in that, in Machete. I don't care for that. But it seemed like for a second there, that Seagal was sort of coming back. But, you knew that would not, that's not going to last. But Seagal here, it looks like he's in decent shape. It's not like he's in hard to kill shape. But I'm like, okay, Seagal looks like he lost a little bit of weight. And he's in okay shape here. And, I mean, the one thing, too, that I will say that kind of bugged me with this film here was the accent. I don't know what Seagal was going for with that. I mean, it's not, Attack Force levels of bad where, the dubbing is in and out, in and out, in and out. It's not that bad. It's not on that level, but, I don't know what Seagal was going for here. Like at times you would have his normal voice, but at other times he would pull off the Russian accent, or you would hear a little bit of Russian. I'm like, Seagal, just stick to your normal voice, please. Man, this would be, a little bit better. Now, I would still say at the end of the day, this was an okay movie, a kind of a time waster, because there were some things in here that I did not mind. Uh, I mean, you do have some decent gunplay in the movie, and again, it's not on the level of Under Siege or those movies back in the day with Seagal. Not on even on Deadly Ground, or Fire Down Below, Exit Wounds. It's not. Those movies are better than this movie. But for a direct-to-video film, I mean, there was some decent gunplay in there. And again, I mentioned, I talked about the accent. I don't know if you really needed the accent. You could just say that, he was affiliated with the Russian mob. Just have him, again, play a regular American. Just have his regular accent. Stop going in and out here with the accent. But again, Seagal, he's in decent shape here. You have a scene in the beginning where he takes out these two guys with the glass and a knee to the face. I'm like, okay. So I'll give it that. Just kind of looking at a little bit of notes here. And again, you have some decent shootouts here. You have a scene where he goes into a pawn shop and he's looking for a ring, and he busts up. He beats up the clerk, which I thought was fun. You have some shootouts and in a building, and then at one point, the main villain in the film, shot this dude's ear off, and I'm like, that was a pretty cool effect. It was practical. He shot the dude's ear. He shot the dude's ear off, and it's a practical squib, practical blood. You have some knife fights in here, but it's not like the end fight in Under Siege. One thing I will say, and I just reminded myself too, there's a scene in here where Seagal has a little fight in this bar, and he kills this guy because there's this metal needle on the bar, and he slams his head into it. I'm like, okay, that was cool. So I mean, yeah, I'm moving my note around, but as far as gunplay, shootouts, fight scenes that were okay. I mean, of course, the camera has to be like this, and it's kind of very sporadic. And I'm like, stop doing that, camera. Whoever's operating the camera need to just stop. Just capture what's happening. Stop trying to shake the camera around. You're not Paul Greengrass. But that was, around this time, Seagal was making these direct-to-video films left and right. And you had a lot of that. You had a lot of, the quick cuts and stuff. And I'm like, stop with the quick cuts and the shaky cam. And just pull back and pan, film what's happening in the entire scene. I mean, I understood what was happening as far as some of the attacks and stuff, but it's stop shaking the camera. I mean, there's one scene where, I was just reminded too, where Seagal's character's buying a gun, and he goes into this shooting range, and he kills a couple of guys, or it was 3 or 4 guys, and I'm like, okay, that was an okay scene. In the third act, you have this shootout in a hospital, and again, the shootouts, for direct-to-video, I mean, I've seen better shootouts in other direct-to-video films, but it was still okay. The main villain, I mean, he was okay. I mean, nothing, not Seagal's. You can't compare to other Seagal, villains that you've seen before. But, he did get a good comeuppance, the villain in this movie, because Seagal and him get into a little scuffle, and then he takes, the part of a gun and he shoves it into the guy's eye socket. I'm like, okay, that's something you would see back in the day, but, and like I said, I thought Driven to Kill for a direct-to-video movie, and I think it gets like a 5 on IMDb, like an even 5 out of 10. And, I think that's a good score. I mean, it could be, a 5 or 5.5. It's kind of, middle of the road. It's an okay Seagal movie. And like I said, I did have nitpicks with the film. The accent was just a bit much. Yeah, I just use your normal voice, Seagal. And I know that, for some reason, Seagal loves Russia. So I don't know if, because of this movie and the plot, the story, because he loves Russia so much, that he put a little bit more effort into it. I mean, you see in this film, he's in decent shape. So, I don't know, it just seemed, and this film here had like a budget of 10 million. So, again, it seemed like Seagal put a little bit more effort into this film. I mean, is it because of, the story and the fact that it has something to do with Russia? I don't know. But, I mean, it's, and I haven't seen, too many of his direct-to-video films because I don't want to put myself through that. But I will say this was an okay one. Again, okay time waster. 5 out of 10 on IMDb. Not bad. And maybe thinking about it, because that Seagal would make more movies after this. And I'm like, why didn't Seagal just end his career with this movie? And that's something I kept thinking about. Like, if Seagal had ended his career with this movie, I would have been like, okay, it's not Attack Force. It's not as bad as these other movies, but you could tell that, again, Seagal was in decent shape here. It seemed like he tried a little bit, but the action, I mean, you could say, to be fair, there's a bit more gunplay than, like you would see Seagal's Aikido. You do see some of that here, but it's a lot more gunplay. And I'm like, Seagal should have just ended his career with this movie. To be honest. I mean, you think... Because then the same year, he also had The Keeper. And that wasn't too bad, from what I remember. But, what came after, Seagal kept making movies. I mean, back in 2016, he made, 7 movies? Something around there. But, yeah, so I would say Driven to Kill, it was okay. Time waster. That's all I can say about the movie. Now, next up, I'm going to talk about Willy's Wonderland, which came out last year, which stars Nicolas Cage. And the plot to this movie, he's a drifter. He's a quiet drifter. And he's tricked into doing a janitorial job at this now condemned Willy's Wonderland. And he's tasked with, cleaning up the place because he blew out the tires on his car. And he doesn't necessarily have, the money to fix it. So in exchange, he has to clean up this abandoned kind of park. And, he's cleaning up the inside. And, soon enough, the animatronics inside this park, they come to life. And you have all these different type of characters, these animatronics that come to life. And, meanwhile, on the outside, you have these kids that are aware of sort of the demonic stuff that's happening within Willy's Wonderland, and they want to burn it down. And on the inside, Nicolas Cage is trying to stop these animatronics and stuff, and that's kind of the plot here. And Willy's Wonderland, I was able to watch on Hulu, which I don't have, but well, it's my brother's. I just, I don't pay for it, but I just, I was able to watch it. And I enjoyed it. Willy's Wonderland, it was a bonkers movie. I really enjoyed it here. Nicolas Cage, does a good job in the movie. And, for a character that doesn't really have a lot of dialogue, I mean, no dialogue at all. He's a quiet person. He's a character that doesn't say much. It's all about, the body language. And I enjoyed that. It was different. And I think it, really worked here for this movie that his character didn't say a word. He did his job, or at least he tried. But in the park, again, you would have all these killer animatronics that would come to life. And yeah, even the, look of the animatronics I thought were good. Like every character had a unique look, and I think like one was an ostrich, one it was like a crocodile, which that was a fun scene where, these two teenagers break into the place and they're having sex, and this crocodile animatronic is feasting on the kids. As weird as that sounds, to me it worked. But that's this film. I mean, to me it's a bonkers movie, but it's also fun. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's a perfect movie. I mean, I had fun with the movie. That's the thing. This film was, fun and enjoyable and weird, funny, bonkers. I mean, whatever, term you want to throw in there. It's a bonkers movie. I mean, you have Nicolas Cage killing animatronics, he takes a mop, breaks it in half, and he's beating the shit out of this ostrich animatronic. And he got all the mechanisms and the oil, kind of splattering around. He gets into a fight in this bathroom with I think it was like a gorilla. And he beats the shit out of the gorilla. And what else? And the crocodile that, kills the kids in the movie tears its mouth open. I'm like, okay, this is fun. And, the plot was simple enough and straightforward. And this director here, Kevin Lewis, I don't know what else he's done. The guy who directed Willy's Wonderland, but I thought he did a decent job here. I mean, establishing this park and, certain little elements that to me worked. For instance, Nicolas Cage would have this soda called Punch Pop. And, kind of, in a way, the Punch Pop was its own character. A lot of the animatronics in the film, there were characters. Some of the jingles in the movie were fun. I can't remember the jingles off the top, but, you got the, head and shoulders, knees and toes. I mean, you got that in the movie where these two animatronics are in front of Nicolas Cage. And Nicolas Cage beats the shit out of them. And you got little jingles in the little jingles in the movie because it's a park. And, Nicolas Cage is, again, he's going berserk. There's one moment where, and I'm sure people can find it. I'm sure it's on YouTube. But this ostrich animatronic, pecks at Nicolas Cage, makes him bleed right here, and it's like he goes into berserk mode. And he puts like a piece of duct tape right here, and he goes full on Cage. The cage is uncaged in this movie. And it was cool at the end of can't even talk right. It was cool at the end of the movie to hear the song Freebird by Leonard Skinner. That was cool. Now, within the story, too, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler here, but, you get the sense that... So, basically, the theme park here, the locals have made a deal with the park that, leave us alone and we'll feed you. And basically, people from out of town would come in, and they would, they would go to this park because, they needed a job or, something of that sort. And the animatronics, would come to life and feast on strangers because, the sheriff was in on it and had made a deal with the park because the park was its own entity, if you will. And the main animatronic. So, part of the town is in on, the park, come to life and, feasting on, tourists, pretty much. So, that aspect was cool. The sheriff in the, I recognized the sheriff in the movie. I know I've seen her in other movies before, but, she was fine. The kids in the film, I thought they were okay. I mean, Nicolas Cage, of course, is the strongest actor in this movie. And, even with this character not having, a lot of dialogue or no dialogue, really, he still is the best part here. And again, the kids are okay. The main girl didn't bother me too much. The actress that played the sheriff, I thought she did fine. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of, supporting people here that, you may know or that you've seen before. The pacing of the movie I thought was fine. I think the movie's like an hour and 20-something minutes. But, it moved at a good pace. Again, it was cool to see at the very end where, Nicolas Cage makes it out, and the two guys that had offered him the job were surprised that he made it out. And it's a cool moment because you hear the song Freebird, and I'm like, hey, this is cool. Gets his car back, and he takes off. So the film has a cool ending. And I don't want to dive too much into this I don't want to give a whole lot away or dive really deep into this movie, but Willy's Wonderland I thought was a fun, weird time, and I just enjoyed it. I mean, again, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a perfect movie. I do think, it could have been, maybe, okay, I have two things here if I could think of with this movie. Maybe it could have been a little bit longer. I don't know, maybe you could have added a little bit more to the runtime. Give it a little bit more time, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Maybe I could have, if I were the director, I would have slowed down the camera work a little bit because it's a little bit, as far as, the style of the camera work and what have you. It's, it's very sporadic and very herky-jerky. And it doesn't, bring down the film for me, but I probably would have slowed down the camera work a little bit, not get too flashy, or, it kind of reminded me of Crank a little bit. And I love Crank, and I like that style, but, and that's a very small nitpick. But, yeah, so I did enjoy the movie. Again, I thought it was fun, it was funny, it was weird, it was bonkers. Again, not a perfect movie, but I recommend Willy's Wonderland if you haven't seen it. So the last movie I'm going to talk about here, also for Stranger Boy, is Final Destination. And it was great to watch again. I have not seen this movie in a while. But, so, I'll talk about the plot real fast here. So you have this entire high school class that's going to Paris. The main character, Alex, is played by Devon Sawa. And he can't shake his fear of flying. And once he's on board the plane, he has disruptive premonition, which gets him and 5 of his classmates kicked off the plane because he believes that the plane is going to crash. And as the students watch the plane depart, they witness the horrifying disaster that proves the deadly premonition true. And now they have dodged death. The terror begins for these characters as they're, being killed one by one. And they're trying to figure out how to cheat death. And yeah, that's kind of the plot here to this movie. And yes, I cheated a little bit. But yeah, again, Final Destination, it was great to watch again. And yeah, I mean, I still haven't seen the other movies. I do have 2 and 3, but I have not seen those yet. I have seen 5. I think when that came out back in 2010 or 2011, I did see that movie, and I don't remember much about it. But this film, I thought, the cast here worked for the most part. Devon Sawa, I thought he was a good lead in the movie. And this guy you've seen before, of course, in Casper, Idle Hands, which I haven't seen Idle Hands. But also you have Ali Larder. You have Kerr Smith in the movie. Tony Todd as a character that would be reoccurring. And his part in the movie, he's this, I forgot what you call him. Why can't I figure out the name? Why can I figure out the name of that occupation? But, getting back to what I was saying, it'll come back to me. It's on the tip of my tongue, but he's like a coroner. Yeah, Tony Todd's character, he's like a coroner in the movie, but his character would come back. And you have Sean William Scott in the movie. Yeah, this is right after American Pie. Sean William Scott, I thought he was okay in the film. I think he does better in American Pie, and you get a little bit of that here, but I don't know, maybe. And again, I like Sean. I can't even talk right. Sorry, but I do like Sean William Scott. But I think that here, I don't know, it just seemed like he was a bit too panicky for my liking, or kind of a bit annoying. I think maybe, because of American Pie, this is right after that, and that's probably why he was in this movie. And again, I usually like Sean William Scott, but I just think he does better in American Pie, and it's like he tries to bring that a little bit here to his character, but at times, he got a little bit too panicky, or a little bit too annoying. But he's not terrible. He's I'm like that, like with this character in the movie. I'm like that. I mean, it's really focused on the kids here in the movie. I mean, there's one or two other actors that in here that you've seen before in other films, but like that are supporting players. But it's mainly focused on Devon Sawa and this group of kids. Now, the film was directed by James Wong, who I believe worked on the X-Files. And if I remember correctly, I think this idea, this plot, was sort of an idea they had for an X-Files episode. And James Wong, he would also, again, well, before this, actually, after this movie, he would direct The One with Jet Li. And again, he worked on the X-Files as a producer. And I thought James Wong, did a good job here directing. I mean, there's some good scenes in the film where, like they would try to, cheat death and something would happen. Or like, when Devon Sawa, his character would have these premonitions of who's going to be next. And like, you get a couple of good scenes here, a couple of good death scenes. One guy gets strangled in the shower. You got this one scene where this teacher, the computer explodes because water had dripped into the computer, and the desktop explodes, and this, piece of glass from the monitor went into her neck, and all this stuff happened in the house where, the house caught on fire, and that was kind of a cool death. You got the scene with the with the train, where they're stuck in the tracks and they're trying to get this one guy out, and they barely get out. But Sean William Scott, his character gets like half of his head torn off because the train had run over this piece of metal, and it just it ran over this piece of metal, and it flies, and then it cuts Sean William Scott's head like right in half. I thought that was a cool scene. So you got some cool stuff like that. Some cool death scenes, because again, Devon Sawa's character would have these premonitions of the other characters, and they would try to again cheat death. Like, okay, if this person, and I thought that was a cool concept. The story, the plot to the film, I thought was a cool concept where, Devon Sawa has, he's having these visions of, the next person, and, they're trying to cheat death, but then it goes to the next. It skips over this person, and then the other person gets it. And so I like the idea. I just like the concept. I thought, is a cool concept. And, the pacing to the film, it's an hour and a half. And, yeah, I mean, it's a good, horror thriller. And again, I haven't seen the other sequels. And, yeah, I mean, there's some good suspense elements there. There's some good horror elements there. Again, I thought the cast, again, Devon Sawa did a good job. Sean William Scott, again, I'm like this, I'm kind of like in the middle with him in this movie. He does better in like American Pie. And again, I just think after that, doing this right after American Pie, I think if he had played it a little bit more serious, or, not be as panicky or, whiny, just tone it down a little bit. I probably would have liked it more, but, Tony Todd, is cool to see him here in the movie. And, yeah, I mean, you get some good bloody scenes. I mean, as far as, like, some of the kills, you get some good kill scenes. And, yeah, I mean, so, Final Destination, it's a classic. And I had no idea how much of a hit it was, because the budget was around 23 million, and it made over almost 113 million, and I believe it came out in March of that year. So again, I'm like, I had no idea, this film was it made some money. It was kind of a hit when it came out. And yeah, so yeah, Final Destination, again, it's a classic. But, that's it for this video here. Just want to say thank you to Flash Flex and Stranger Boy for recommending these movies. So, yeah, that's it for this video here. And now we're winding down to, the last couple of videos as far as request videos. So that will be coming up soon. But overall, thank you for watching, and have a good day.